The sound of a plate crashing onto the diner floor echoed like a gunshot. Clara didn't move. She stood by the counter, frozen, watching a little boy at the far end of the diner. His tiny body sat slouched on the red leather seat at table 7. Torn jacket, shoelaces untied, and a face far too serious for someone no older than 7. He looked like hunger itself. Clara, her manager, Doug, barked from behind the counter. "What the hell was that? Third plate this week, get it together." But she didn't respond. Clara couldn't look away from the boy. His fingers were gripping an empty glass of water like it was gold. His big brown eyes weren't begging, they weren't crying. They were just ... waiting. She reached into the pocket of her apron, pulled out her only staff meal voucher for the day, and without a second thought, walked into the kitchen. "Mario," she called to the cook. "1 plate of spaghetti and meatballs. Rush it." Mario looked up from the grill, confused. "That for you?" "No," she replied. "It's for a kid." Mario squinted past the steam. "He pink." "No." Clara ... double quotes. He warned. "You know Doug will flip." "I'll take the hit," she said. 2 minutes later, the hot plate was ready. She carried it over and gently placed it in front of the boy. He didn't smile. He didn't even look at her. He just picked up the fork and started eating like it was his first real meal in days. "You're safe here," Clara whispered, gently patting his shoulder. That was when Doug came storming through the dining room, face bright red. "What is this?" he growled, voice loud enough to make heads turn. Clara stood between him and the child. "He's hungry." "Doug, I used my voucher." "I don't care," Doug hissed. "Company policy says no service without payment or a legal guardian present. We're not a charity." "He's just a kid," she said, her voice steady but soft. Doug's eyes narrowed. "You just cost us a customer. That couple over there walked out because of this nonsense. You want to feed strays? Do it on your own time." "I did," she said. "That was my meal." Doug pointed to the door. "You're done here. Fired. Get out." For a second, Clara didn't breathe. It wasn't shock she'd seen this moment coming. The moment when doing the right thing finally clashed with the rules made by people who had never known hunger. She took off her apron and folded it slowly, not letting her hands shake. The boy paused. "He's eating." "Don't worry," she told him softly. "You finish that. Don't listen to anyone." Clara turned, ready to leave, when a deep voice called out from the back. "Is that how you treat compassion in your business?" Everyone turned. A tall man in a charcoal gray suit stood at the far corner booth. He had been sitting quietly behind a newspaper the entire time, unnoticed. Sharp cheekbones, calm but intense eyes, a presence that didn't need to shout to be heard. Doug straightened. "Sir, I didn't see you there." "No, you didn't," the man said, folding his paper. "Because you were too busy shouting at someone doing the only decent thing I've seen here all day." "Sir," Doug stammered. She broke protocol. "It's company policy. I wrote that policy," the man said smoothly. Reaching into his coat, he pulled out a sleek black business card and placed it on the counter in front of Doug. Clara stood silently, eyebrows drawn. Doug blinked down at the card and went pale. Anthony Hayes, Chief Executive Officer, the Iron Plate Diner Group. Anthony looked at Clara. "What's your name?" "Clara," she said, unsure. "Well, Clara," he said, stepping closer, "you're not fired. In fact, you're being promoted. Effective immediately." Gasps spread like wildfire across the restaurant. Doug's jaw dropped. "Sir, that's not necessary," Anthony cut him off. "Doug, report to HR. Now." Doug sputtered. "But I now." Doug turned and stormed into the back, redder than a lobster. Anthony turned back to Clara and held out his hand. She hesitated, but shook it. "Meet me tomorrow morning," he said, handing her another card, this one with his personal number. "There's more to talk about." She stared at him speechless. Then, without another word, he nodded at the boy and walked out. That night, Clara sat on the edge of her mattress in her tiny studio apartment. The heater clanked in the corner. Her jacket still smelled like grease and tomato sauce. She held Anthony's card in her hand like it was burning through her skin. "Meet me tomorrow. There's more you deserve to know." Clara didn't know what more meant. A better job, a new start. But something didn't sit right. She pulled out an old tin box from under her bed. It was dented and rusted, but inside were clippings, newspapers, printed articles, some dating back over a decade. She found the one she was looking for. CEO's family disappears in fire mystery, still unsolved. Anthony Hayes, wife and 6-year-old son presumed dead in mountain cabin fire. Investigators find no remains. Hayes never remarried. Case remains open. She stared at the black and white photo beneath the headline. The boy in the photo, Anthony's missing son, had big brown eyes, just like the boy Clara fed earlier that day. No, it couldn't be. That boy was supposed to be dead. But what if he wasn't? What if the fire didn't take him? What if someone had hidden him? And what if, by giving that boy a meal, Clara had stumbled into something much darker than she realized? Suddenly, the room felt colder. She looked back at Anthony's card, a man who had been silent the whole time, watching, waiting. Why had he really been at the diner that day? And how did he know her name before she told him? Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. Clara sat back against the wall, her heart beat loud in her ears, because something told her tomorrow might change her life forever, and not in the way she expected. Clara didn't sleep that night. The storm outside her apartment window had finally died, but her thoughts hadn't. Every time she closed her eyes, the little boy's face appeared the way he had devoured that food without looking up, like trust was something he'd forgotten how to feel. And then, there was Anthony Hayes, CEO.com, powerful to calm. Who just happens to be at her dingy diner the exact moment she feeds a mystery child. The photo in the article wouldn't leave her mind. She'd studied it for hours, the boy beside Anthony's wife, all smiling in front of a burning fireplace. That boy looked exactly like the one at table 7. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. 9 a.m. sharp. I'll send a car. AH. She stared at the message. Her gut screamed, don't go. Something's wrong. But her heart whispered, what if this is finally the truth you've been waiting for? At 8:59 the next morning, a black sedan pulled up outside her building. The driver stepped out, holding the door open. Miss Clara. She nodded, dressed in the cleanest clothes she owned, a navy blouse and slacks she hadn't worn since her last interview years ago. The car was silent the entire way. They pulled into a glass and steel tower downtown. Hayes, Global HQ. Inside, everything was polished chrome and cold air conditioning. She followed the assistant wordlessly to the top floor, her footsteps echoing across the marble. Anthony was already waiting in his office floor, 2 ceiling windows behind him, casting him in a halo of white light. Thank you for coming, he said without looking up. Please, sit. She did. I assume, he continued, you have questions. Clara didn't answer. She reached into her purse, pulled out the newspaper clipping, and placed it on his desk. He looked at it, didn't flinch. You'd think that boy yesterday was my son, he asked quietly. Clara's voice was firm. I think he is. Anthony leaned back slowly, his face unreadable. You have a good eye. Her heart skipped stot, so it was true. She sat back. How is that possible? The fire, he nodded. The fire was real, but the story was edited. Clara swallowed hard. Anthony stood and walked to the window. My wife and son were taken. The fire was staged to cover it. The media bought the story. Everyone did. I buried 2 empty coffins. Taken, she whispered. By who? He turned. I don't know. But for the past 7 years, I've used every resource I have to find them. My wife is still missing, but yesterday, when I saw that boy, I knew. So, the boy is my son, he said firmly. No doubt. Then why didn't you take him home? She asked. Why didn't you speak to him? Anthony's eyes clouded. Because he doesn't remember me, or he's been told not to. Clara felt like the floor had shifted beneath her. Then who was he with? She asked. Anthony tapped a button on his desk. The wall behind her opened into a hidden screen. Footage played, security cam footage from the diner. A man in a baseball cap watching from the parking lot, just outside the window where the boy sat eating. That's him, Anthony said coldly. We've seen him in multiple sightings over the years. A courier, paid in cash, no known identity, and now he's back. Clara gripped the edge of the chair. Why would they bring your son to a public diner? Anthony's jaw tightened. Because they wanted me to see him. She stared at him. They're baiting you. He nodded once. And they used you to do it. Clara's blood ran cold. Wait, are you saying they planned for me to feed him? Anthony finally sat down again, folding his hands. Maybe, or maybe you were just kind, but now you're involved. She stood. No, I fed a hungry child. I didn't ask to be part of this. I know, he said gently, but they know your name, your face. Your life isn't safe anymore. Clara's breath caught in her throat. I'll protect you, Anthony added, but I need your help. She hesitated. Help you? How? Find him, gain his trust. You're the only person he responded to. Clara's heart pounded. You want me to spy on a kidnapped child? I want you to help bring him home. 2 days later, Clara returned to the diner not as a waitress, but as a customer. Anthony had shut the place down for inspection, but the neighborhood kids still passed through the alley beside it. Clara brought a bag of sandwiches and sat outside on the bench, pretending not to watch. She didn't have to wait long. The boy came back, alone this time. He walked slowly, checking over his shoulder. When he saw her, he stopped. Clara smiled. Hey, spaghetti boy. He hesitated, then walked over. I saved you something, she said, holding up a sandwich. He sat beside her, unwrapping it carefully. You okay? She asked. He shrugged. What's your name? She tried again. He paused. They told me not to tell. Who did? He looked down. She changed the subject. I used to work here, you know. Got fired for feeding you. He blinked. Sorry. Clara laughed. Don't be. I got promoted. He tilted his head. What's a promoted? She smiled. It means I got a better job. He nodded like he didn't fully understand, but liked the idea. She looked at him closely. Can I tell you something? He looked up. You remind me of someone your age who went missing a long time ago. The boy froze. Clara's voice softened. I think you're him. He didn't answer. Do you remember your mum? He flinched. Clara reached into her bag. Look, she whispered. She pulled out a small, folded photo. It was a family picture. Anthony, his wife, and the boy. A happy moment, frozen in time. The boy stared at it for a long time. That's me, he whispered. Her heart ached. He looked at her with wide eyes. Is he my dad? Yes, she whispered. Then the boy suddenly grabbed the photo and shoved it into his coat. His hands trembled. I can't talk to him, he said quickly. Why not? They said they'll hurt her. Clara's chest tightened. Hurt who? My mum, he whispered, and suddenly everything clicked. The boy had been used as leverage. Whoever took him still had the mother. He had been raised with one rule: never reveal himself, never speak to his father, or else. The boy stood quickly. I have to go. Wait, she said. Let me help. But he was gone, disappearing down the alley like smoke. That night, Clara told Anthony everything. He didn't cry, but he closed his eyes like her words were knives. They're using him, he said quietly, to control her, to punish me. What will you do? She asked. His eyes opened full of fire now. I'll trade myself, he said. Clara blinked. What? I'll offer myself in exchange for her and the boy. It's the only way. You'll walk into a trap. I've built a fortune on playing dangerous games. I know how this ends. Clara shook her head. There has to be another way, but he had already made up his mind, and when she saw the goodbye letter he left on his desk the next morning, she realized he planned on never coming back. The letter was short. Clara, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've made contact. They want me, not my son. This is the only way to free them both. If I don't return, do not search for me. Protect him. Anthony. Clara stared at the handwritten note, heart pounding so loud she could barely think. He was serious. He was walking into danger alone. She crushed the letter in her fist, stood from Anthony's desk, and stormed into the hallway of his office suite. The staff looked at her with wide eyes. No one stopped her. No one could. She barged into the conference room, where his security chief, Martin, sat in front of a wall of monitors. The man was ex-military, stone-faced, and loyal. To a fault. He's gone, Clara said. You have to find him. Martin didn't flinch. We've been tracking him. What? She blinked. He knew you'd come straight to me. He left instructions to let you in on everything. He tapped a key. The monitors shifted. One screen showed a remote forest cabin, surrounded by pines, deep in the mountains. Where is that? Clara asked. Old family retreat, abandoned since the fire. We just got confirmation Anthony's there. And so are they. They? She asked. Martin zoomed in. Blurry figures outside. One tall, one small, and a woman. Clara's breath hitched. That's them. Yes, Martin said. The boy, the mother, and the courier. Clara narrowed her eyes. He's trading himself, isn't he? Yes. Then why aren't we stopping it? Martin looked at her. Because it's already in motion. But Anthony left us a second plan. He called it Plan Mercy. What's that? Martin looked directly at her. Hours later, Clara was in a black SUV with tinted windows, headed straight for the forest. She wore a wire, carried a tracker, and tucked into her coat was a hidden phone that transmitted audio back to Martin and his team. Clara had never held a gun, never been in a high-stakes mission. She was just a waitress with a stubborn heart. But that little boy had trusted her, and Anthony had trusted her, too. That was enough. The car stopped miles away from the cabin. She hiked the rest through mud, cold wind, and thickets of trees. Her shoes soaked, her breath fogged in front of her. When the cabin appeared between the trees, her chest tightened. Two men stood outside, one of them the courier, the other a stranger with a limp and a scar down his neck. Inside the cabin, through the cracked window, Clara saw the boy sitting on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, and Anthony, his hands tied to a chair, calm/steady. The woman, his wife, Amelia, stood in the corner, trembling, bruised but alive. Clara stepped into the clearing, hands raised. The courier spun, gun raised. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm here to trade," Clara said boldly. "Let the kid go." Scarneck man raised a brow. "You're nobody." Clara didn't blink. "Exactly. So what harm can I do?" The courier looked her up and down. "You, the one from the diner?" "Yes." "You fed him?" Clara nodded. "And I'll do it again." Anthony looked up from his chair. When he saw her, his eyes flashed in panic. He shook his head no, but she ignored him. The courier smirked. "Tie her up. She'll be fun leverage." But before they could reach her, Clara shouted, "You want money? You want silence? I can give you both, but not if you kill Anthony Hayes." The courier paused. Scarneck asked, "What do you know about silence?" Clara slowly stepped forward. "I know you've kept a boy hidden for 7 years. I know you faked a fire and made a mother disappear. But that boy remembers. He's talking now." The courier narrowed his eyes. "You're bluffing, am I?" Clara said calmly. She reached into her coat hand, dropped the hidden phone on the ground. The screen lit up. A red light blinked. "They've heard everything," she whispered. In that moment, panic ripped through the men. Scarneck raised his gun, but a shot rang out from the trees. He dropped, screaming, "Snipers!" From Anthony's private security. Chaos erupted. The courier grabbed Amelia, dragging her toward the back door. "Move, and I shoot her," Anthony shouted. "No." Clara didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the boy. He looked at her. Just like he did that day in the diner, and he ran to her, right into her arms. The courier hesitated just long enough for Martin's men to storm in from the back. He was tackled, disarmed, and cuffed. Within seconds, Amelia collapsed to the floor, sobbing. Anthony, freed by Clara herself, ran to his wife and knelt, gathering her and their son into his arms. For the first time in 7 years, they were whole. Clara stood back, breathless, heart pounding. She didn't belong in that moment, but somehow, she had helped make it happen. Back at HQ, after medics checked everyone and legal teams were briefed, Clara sat alone in Anthony's office. He walked in, a cut on his lip, dirt still on his sleeves, but his eyes glowed. "You disobeyed me," he said with a smile. "You're welcome," she replied, sipping tea. He chuckled. "You saved us." Clara looked down. "You saved me first, the day you didn't let Doug fire me." Anthony leaned on the desk. "You were never meant to be a waitress, Clara. You were meant to be ... this." She raised an eyebrow. "A spy, a fighter," he said. "A protector." She smiled, unsure of what came next. Anthony handed her a sealed envelope. "This is for you." She opened it slowly. Inside was a check, a number so large, she blinked twice. "I can't accept this," she said. "You can," he said. "And you will. It's not charity. It's gratitude." She paused. "What will happen to them?" "My family." He smiled. "Protected, homeschooled, recovered, in time. But they'll never forget what you did." She blinked back emotion. "I've also arranged for something else," he added. "The diner. Yours now." "What?" "I bought it this morning. It's under your name." She stared at him, speechless. "Turn it into whatever you want. A cafe, a shelter, a place where kids like my son can eat without being questioned." Tears filled her eyes. Then Anthony leaned closer, voice soft. "And Clara, you'll never be just a waitress again." That night, Clara stood in front of the old diner. The closed sign still hung in the window, but tomorrow it would open again, and this time, no child would ever leave hungry, because now, the woman behind the counter was someone who understood what it meant to be invisible. Until one kind act changed everything. Sunlight poured through the front windows of the old diner, now painted fresh with soft cream walls and a new sign that read, "The open table where no one eats alone." Clara stood behind the counter, in a navy apron, wiping down the surface with slow, careful strokes. The grand reopening was in an hour dot. Everything was different. New chairs, fresh flooring, warm yellow lights, a bookshelf in the corner, framed photos of neighborhood kids smiling. But the soul of the place remained. It was still a home for the hungry dot, and today it belonged to her. The bell above the door, Jing led. She turned. It was him, the little boy, clean now, hair combed, wearing a sweater with a small superhero emblem. He held his mother's hand. Behind them, Anthony entered with quiet pride in his eyes. Clara smiled wide. "You made it." The boy grinned and ran to her. She bent down and hugged him tight. "I brought you something," he whispered, pulling out a paper drawing from his coat. It was a crayon sketch of her, smiling, handing him a plate of spaghetti. Tears stung her eyes. "I love it." Anthony stepped forward. He insisted we come before the press arrived. Clara chuckled. "Don't worry, you beat them." The boy hopped up onto a stool. "Can I work here?" Clara laughed. "You want a job already?" He nodded. "I can take orders." She looked at his mother Amelia, now slowly healing. Her eyes were tired, but peaceful. She nodded gently. "He talks about you every day." Clara blinked. "I wasn't trying to be a hero." "You weren't," Amelia said softly. "You were just kind. That's what saved us." Anthony placed a hand on her shoulder. "We wouldn't be here without you." Clara smiled but felt a weight in her heart. "What happens now?" "With the people who took you. They're behind bars," Anthony said. "Thanks to your recording and our security team." The courier turned on them. "He gave us names." Clara took a deep breath. "And your company," Anthony smiled. "Still mine, but I'll be stepping back, spending time with my family." "You deserve that," she said. He nodded. "You do too." An hour later, the diner was buzzing. Old customers came in. Strangers wandered off the street. Clara handed out plates like clockwork, but her heart stayed soft and full. A single mom with twin girls sat by the window. She didn't order anything, just sat and watched nervously. Clara walked over with 2 grilled cheese sandwiches and a quiet nod. "No charge," she whispered. The woman's eyes filled. "Thank you." Clara moved to the back where the boy Lucas stood wearing a tiny apron. He was handing napkins to a toddler. Clara smiled. "Hey, coworker, break time." He looked serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." He fiddled with his sleeve. "If I ever get scared again, will you be around?" She knelt down. To his level, always. Lucas leaned in and hugged her tight, no words. For a moment, the world paused. Later that evening, after the rush had settled and the dishes were done, Clara sat in the back booth, sipping tea. Anthony joined her quietly. "Tired?" he asked, in a good way. He studied her. "You know, we ran background checks when you first started." Clara chuckled. "That bad, huh?" "Actually, we learned something else." She raised an eyebrow. "You applied to our internship program 10 years ago. For hospitality management, you made it to the final round." Her breath caught. "I never heard back." He nodded slowly. "The letter was returned. No forwarding address. Then we lost you." Clara sat back, stunned. "That was the year my mother died. I dropped out of school, couldn't afford rent, ended up couchsurfing, then took the waitress job to survive." Anthony's eyes softened. "We missed out on you then. I won't make that mistake again." Clara tilted her head. "What are you saying?" He reached into his coat and slid over an envelope. Inside was a full scholarship, business school, housing included. You can do more than run a diner. You can run the entire Chenif. You want it. Her hands trembled. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you remind me of the kind of leader this world needs." She stared at the papers, heart torn. "I don't know," she said. "I love this place." "You won't have to give it up." He smiled. "We'll keep it open. Staff it. Train someone. But when you're ready, we'll build something bigger." Clara stood outside the diner later that night, locking the doors under a sky full of stars. Behind her, Lucas waved from the window. Amelia smiled. A home, a family, a future. The same diner that once fired her was now a place where kindness reigned. As she turned the lock, she looked across the street to the shadowed alleyway where she'd first seen Lucas sitting alone. She thought of all the children like him. She whispered into the night, "You're not invisible." She placed the keys in her pocket and walked away, stronger than ever. because she'd learned, sometimes, doing the right thing doesn't just change someone's day, it changes the course of many lives, including your own. The end message: kindness doesn't need permission. One act of courage, even from someone with nothing, can awaken justice, restore families, and heal the broken. The world changes when one person dares to care deeply, truly, and without hesitation.